So Newcastle United have made another signing, and there's lots of talk of it potentially being the last signing of what I think has been a very successful transfer window. Lewis Hall, the young left-back from Chelsea who supported Newcastle as a boy, is in. And I'm going to talk on this video why I think this is an absolutely cracking bit of business for Newcastle United. If you're curious, you know what to do. Stick around. Welcome back to the black and the white and the banter, you lovely Newcastle fans. I hope you're having as good a week as possible after we suffered what was a very unheard of foreign thing in a defeat on Saturday. We don't experience many of them, but still plenty to be positive about, as I talked about in my last video. There's no shame in going 1-0 down to the champions in their home turf, but on to Liverpool we go in what promises to be a tasty game. But before we get into the proper topics of this video, Newcastle fans, do us a favour, give me a little likey loo. If you're new here, if you're not new here, it just means this video goes to a couple more eyes. And wouldn't that be nice if black and white banter could take over? And if you like my opinion by the end of this, whack that subscribe. If you don't, that's totally fine. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, as I get told on the daily, as I even get told off my own mother sometimes. So Lewis Hall, Newcastle's latest recruit, is in. Lots of talk, as I said at the start, about this being maybe the last transfer of this window in what has been, for me, an incredibly successful transfer window. It really, really has. Balance, depth, both being added to this Newcastle team, which is exactly what the doctor ordered with the fixtures coming up. But why do I think that Lewis Hall is a very, very good bit of business for Newcastle United and a very smart bit of business? I'm going to rattle off that now. So let's get straight into it. Point number one, and obviously the most important point when signing a player, the boy's got talent. This is a young player who I think if you were to speak about some of the most talented left-backs in the country or in Europe, Lewis Hall comes into that conversation. And the reason that is at the age that he is, he's already played in high-profile games for Chelsea. He made his debut at the Etihad last season where he should have scored twice and really, really caught the eye from from Graham Potter, who was the manager at the time, from Chelsea players, from Man City fans and players. He really, really caught the eye and he just oozed confidence being chucked in at the deep end. He's played in high-profile games at Old Trafford. He played at Newcastle at St James's Park, if anyone remembers, when we beat them 1-0 last year before the Winter World Cup. He's pacey up and down that left-hand side. He can slot it in midfield where he's spent most of his career as more of a youngster, so he's comfortable to play different positions. His passing range is very good with either foot. He's happy to spread the ball about, cross-field passes, left-footed passes, right-footed passes. And in the final third, this guy has quality. He loves to whip a ball in. He loves to get a shot off himself. And you do not need to ask this man to bomb forward at every opportunity. So we are getting a talented player that's not only for the future, because he's only 18, which is a very young player to be bringing in, but because of his current experience and how talented he is, he's also a player for now. So he ticks both boxes in the project that we find ourselves in under Eddie Howe and our new owners. I say new owners. It's not new anymore, is it? Our owners. Need to stop saying new. Second point for me has to be the balance that he offers this Newcastle team. Now, how many times have I spoke about on videos, has it been commonly talked about from all of us Newcastle fans, that although Dan Burn, the Geordie shithouse from Blythe, has done a fantastic job and will continue to do a fantastic job. And I want to reiterate that. He has contributed to one of the best defences in the country, only matched by the champions last year. And he was a huge factor in us getting Champions League football and a cup final. Just want to get that off my chest. It's fair to say that if you compare our left-hand side of the pitch to the right-hand side, there is not that much balance or attacking threat there. Matt Targett would admit that after a couple of beers. Dan Burn would admit that probably before he's even touched a beer, that they aren't the best in the final third. That's not what their game is strongest at. And whilst we have good defensive options there, to have balance in the team, and that can even depend on who the opposition is in the Champions League, the Premier League, the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, it's nice to also have an attacking left-back where things can be mixed up. I'm not saying Lewis Hall is the best option when it's backs against the wall, away at Man City, maybe like we were on Saturday. which wasn't even that backs against the wall, but you catch my drift. Dan Burn can certainly do a job there, but I think Dan Burn would probably admit that he prefers being the left-hand side of maybe either a centre-back 2 or a centre-back 3, if he was telling the truth. He's just happy to play there because it gets him in this Newcastle team, because Botman and Shea are doing such a good job at centre-back. But we have options there, and what this team has craved in a couple of areas is balance. Not only depth, which he does offer, as I mentioned earlier, but now we have left-sided options where, for example, a front 2 on that left-hand side, a 2, of Hall at left-back and Gordon or Barnes in front of them. Wow, that poses some serious attacking threat against maybe lesser sides without sounding disrespectful to other teams in the Premier League. And that's what makes this great. And I've craved that for a long time, and I'm sure a lot of you watching this video have. So that's got to be point number 2. Point number 3, and this is a bit more of an interesting one and certainly an opinion of mine. Lewis Hall offers Eddie Howe tactical options. And you might be thinking, what the hell, how does a left-back offer him tactical options? Not just because he gets forward. If you look at what Arsenal made work for them so well last year as they chased the title, Zinchenko, the left-back, basically made Arsenal's midfielders better. So you still might be wondering, what the hell are you talking about with this? So what I mean by that is Zinchenko, like Lewis Hall, has played a lot of his career in midfield and he likes to play there. Zinchenko last season for Arsenal would move forward and sit with the midfielder, defensive midfielder in this case, Partey for Arsenal. That would allow their other midfielders to basically support the front 3 and create a front 5. So what does that mean for Newcastle? Well, where we can mix things up against teams that are maybe putting every man behind the ball, which we saw so often last season, I've got no doubts about it. When Sheffield United come to St James's Park, they will probably defend for their lives and try and take a point. They won't try and play us in our own game. And we struggled with that. And we also didn't get enough goals from midfield. So where Lewis Hall, during a match, could come in from left-back, he could sit in with, let's say, Tonali, to make a defensive partnership. Trippier could support if needed, so that would be a 3 in a defensive midfield area. That would allow Bruno and Joe Linton to push further up because their positions have been covered. And that would mean a front 5, let's say in this case, of Gordon, Isak, Bruno, Joe Linton and Almiron right at the front end of the pitch. Really, really amongst it. And it would allow our midfielders to really add more goals because they'd have that freedom to not worry about having to get back as quick. And it worked really, really well for Arsenal. And I think that, in this Newcastle team, could work wonders. And Lewis Hall, if you look at the positions he's taken up, which I'll talk about on my next point in a bit more detail, he's played midfield, he's played centre-back, he's played left-back, he's played left midfield. But I see no reason why we can't adapt what Arsenal made work so well in certain scenarios, just as a tactical switch-up, which I think Eddie Howe was maybe guilty of not having a plan B last year, because the plan A worked so well and got us Champions League. We will need that as time goes on. That's what Lewis Hall offers. So that's more of a thought-provoking theory from me on what Lewis Hall can bring that not that many left-backs can, that versatility to move into midfield and allow our midfielders to push up to see more goals from Joey or Tonali or Bruno, depending who sits. So certainly let us know your thoughts on that one, Newcastle fans. Point number 4, as I just mentioned, is Lewis Hall's versatility. Now, we are learning about Eddie Howe. I almost think that when he sits at home with his missus, she gets sick of him talking about versatility. That's how much he creams his pants over it. And the fact that Lewis Hall, as I'm going to share on the screen now, has played last season defensive midfield, centre-back, left midfield. It's like a dot-to-dot of where this guy has played. And that's what you get with a left-back, a defender who's predominantly played midfield in earlier parts of his career. And that's lovely to have because, touch wood, it doesn't happen, but we will get injuries. There's a very high chance we will get injuries as the season goes on, especially with fixture congestion. The fact that Lewis Hall can do a job on the left-hand side of midfield without feeling a bit like a fish out of water, he can slot in defensive midfield like Zinchenko can do for Arsenal and actually like he does for Ukraine. It's wonderful, and it's a wonderful asset to have. And what we are getting now in Livramento, who can play both full-backs, in Lewis Hall, who can play 3 to 4 positions, is versatility in our squad. And that adds to depth because not only is he seen as one position, he's seen as 2 positions. So it's almost like having 2 players. And that just meets lovely into what our squad needs in terms of that balance. Final point for me on why this is a fantastic bit of business is the boy's a Geordie. The boy is a Newcastle fan. And I'm not saying that's a huge factor, but isn't it nice to be bringing players into the club who you know are going to offer 3 to 5 to 6% more every time they pull on the Newcastle shirt. His dad, if you've watched the promo video, was proud as punch, almost upset at his son being unveiled at St James's Park. And, you know, as you would be, as my dad would be. But he knows he's going to be watching him in the stands. And what you are going to get out of Hall in this club is just that extra bit of passion. I'm not doubting for Chelsea, he put on an absolute show of graft from the first minute to the last. But when it's your own club that you are put on the shirt on for, it just hits different. And that's like a final bonus box being ticked with this signing. What he's won for now and he's won for the future, and he's such a talented player. You only have to go on social media and look at what Chelsea fans are saying about him leaving. We haven't even had to hit financial fair play with this because it's a loan signing with an option to buy. And unless something goes dramatically wrong, because I really rate this guy, I think it is a player that we will be taking up in the summer, next summer, in a year's time, on a full-time deal for 28 million, which, can I just say, for the age of him, if he plays enough minutes and looks solid enough this year, is a snip. An absolute snip. I'm really excited about this signing, and for me, if this is to be the last of the window, which you never know with this Newcastle, what Eddie Howe says and this club, whether there's truth in that, the window shuts next Friday. Basically a week of it left as I make this video. Is he going to be the last signing? We would probably have liked to have seen a centre-back. We would probably like to have seen, in my opinion, a central attacking midfielder, sort of a Roman midfielder. But I'm more than happy with our squad. If you look in every position now, we have numerous options, and I'm not saying those options are world-class, but Lewis Hall in that left-back area where we did look a little bit imbalanced, probably is the most imbalanced out of anywhere else on the pitch, that box has been ticked. It's not only been ticked, it's been ticked with a prospect who is for now and for the future, who's an absolute baller. Newcastle fans, let us know your thoughts on Lewis Hall. Let us know what you think about my theory on the tactical switch-up that this could allow for Mr. Eddie Howe, because that was a little bit more thought-provoking than what I would normally say. There's more videos coming up. That Liverpool match preview is on the horizon on what promises to be a tasty fixture on a bank holiday Sunday. 4:30 bank holiday. There's going to be plenty of them being consumed, and I've got no doubts about it, a cracking atmosphere. So if you want to catch the match vlogs and such like that will be coming for that, whack that subscribe. Enjoy the rest of your week, Newcastle fans. Lewis Hall is a member of Eddie Howe's absolutely class mags, and I couldn't be happier about it. Away the lads!